I'm severely red, green, colorblind. I've never even had a driver's license in my life. But at 3 a.m., my neighbor suddenly broke down my door, accusing me of hitting his father with my car. He pointed at the blood on the front of my Porsche and demanded I pay $30,000 for medical bills. The whole building turned against me, calling me heartless and cruel. Even the surveillance footage the police pulled up clearly showed my car running someone over and fleeing the scene, just as the handcuffs snapped around my wrists. When everyone thought I was about to spend the rest of my life in prison, I stared at the traffic light in the video and suddenly let out a cold laugh. Sir, please calm down. I try to keep my voice steady. I didn't leave my apartment today. You must have the wrong person. John lived in the unit below mine. We usually nodded to each other when we crossed paths, but right now he looked like he wanted to eat me alive. He shoved his phone screen in my face. Wrong person. Is this your license plate or not? The screen showed the rear of a Porsche Panamera. The plate number clear as day, A123. I squinted at it for 2 seconds and nodded. That's my car. So you admit it. He turned to the other neighbors. Everyone heard that, right? The car is hers. The hallway erupted. That's rich people for you hit someone and won't own up to it. Look at her face. Acting all innocent, his wife pushed through with the child in her arms and collapsed to her knees, sobbing hysterically. Please, I'm begging you. My dad's on a ventilator. The surgery costs $30,000. It's nothing to you, but it'll destroy our family. You can't just let him die. My scalp prickled. I quickly tried to help her up. Please get up first. We haven't even figured out what happened. It's crystal clear. John grabbed my arm. I saw it with my own eyes. Your car ran a red light and sent my dad flying 20 feet. Finally, fully awake, anger flared inside me. I didn't drive anywhere today. Just because you say I hit him means I did. $30,000. Why not say $300,000? I could just as easily say you're trying to rob me. The moment the words left my mouth, John's hand connected with my face. Slap sent me stumbling back 2 steps, my ears ringing. Bullshit. He jabbed his finger at my nose. My father is dying. If you don't pay up, I'll call the cops right now and have you thrown in jail. You won't get away with this. Someone in the hallway cheered him on. Good people like her need to be taught a lesson. The neighbors grew more agitated. Don't waste your breath on her. Call the police. Lock her up. His wife knelt on the floor sobbing uncontrollably, the child wailing along. With her camera flashes went off in my face, covered my cheek and slowly straightened. Fine, call the police. John froze. Didn't you say you'd call them? Go ahead. I wiped the blood from the corner of my mouth. I turned, pulled something from my bedside table, and slapped it against his chest. While you're at it, have them explain how someone who's red, green, colorblind, and can't drive managed to hit her dad. John stared down at the red, green colorblindness certificate for 3 seconds. The shouting from the hallway stopped. Someone muttered quietly, red, green, colorblind. Doesn't that mean she can't get a license? John, could you have gotten the wrong person? I pointed at the paper in his hands. See it clearly? It's got an official stamp. Can you read? John's face went from pale to flushed and back again. The next second, he threw the paper on the ground. You think one piece of paper can fool me? You can afford a Porsche Panamera, but you don't have a license. Stepped closer. Besides, if you really are colorblind, that means you were driving without a license. That makes it even worse. The others nodded in sudden understanding. Right? She almost tricked us. No wonder she ran the red light. She can't tell the colors apart at all. I had no interest in continuing this pointless argument. Fine. I pulled out my phone. Like I said, let's call the police. We'll see if I'm playing dumb. Or, if you're trying to scam me, go ahead, call them. We'll see who they arrest when they get here. John snarled. The call connected. I gave them the address and explained the situation. After hanging up, I leaned against the door frame. Without another word, John kept ranting. You're calling the police, now, just to stall until my dad dies. Don't think you can get away with this. No matter what, I'm sending you to prison. Shut up, I said coldly. Your dad's not dead yet. Why are you so eager to curse him? Afraid he'll die, and you'll get less money? John's expression changed instantly. Say that again? He lunged at me, but his wife grabbed him and held him back. I was about to respond when sirens wailed from downstairs. John rushed toward them like he'd found a savior. Officers, it's her. She ran a red light and hit my dad, then refused to admit it. The police officer looked me over. Are you the owner of vehicle A123? Yes. Did you hit someone?
No.
John panicked. It was her. I saw it with my own eyes. The officer waited for him to be quiet and turned back to me. Miss, you say you didn't hit anyone. Do you have proof? I picked up the certificate from the floor and handed it over. The officer opened it and paused. Red, green, colorblind?
Yes.
I nodded. The officer frowned. Then how did you get this car? It's a keepsake for my father. I paused, but I can't drive it, so it's always been parked in the garage. The dealership comes to pick it up for maintenance. There are records. John sneered. Keep making stuff up. You think the cops will believe you? The officer ignored him and turned to the property manager. Pull up the security footage. Manager scratched his head. Well, we had that heavy snow a couple days ago, right? It damaged some of the wiring. The parking garage cameras are down. We haven't had a chance to fix them yet. My heart sank. What a coincidence. John immediately perked up. The footage is gone. Your evidence disappeared. Bet you're thrilled. The officer frowned. Sir, please remain quiet. We have our own procedures. Without clear evidence, please show this woman some respect. He turned to me. Miss, does your car have a dash cam?
Yes.
May we take a look? I nodded, grabbed the car keys from the living room cabinet, and handed them over. Group went downstairs to the underground garage. The officer had just reached the front of the car and hadn't even opened the door yet. Suddenly, John rushed forward and threw himself onto the hood, his voice cracking with excitement. Officers, come look at this. He pointed at the front bumper. What is this? I walked over and used my phone light to see. The right side of the bumper was a fresh scrape mark with a blood stain on it. The crowd erupted. There's no denying it now. The car's got such a huge dent. She was so stubborn before. Let's see what she says now. John's wife rushed forward with the child, pointing at the blood stain. That's my dad's blood. What do you have to say for yourself now? My head was spinning. Impossible. I never drove the car. The officer crouched down, shining his flashlight on the mark. His brow furrowed. Miss, how do you explain this? I opened my mouth, my voice dry. I don't know. I really never drove the car. John sneered. Don't know. It's your car. The blood's right here, and you don't know. The officer stood up and looked at me. Miss, we need to collect samples for testing. Please cooperate with the investigation and come with us. My instincts told me that if I went with them now, things would only get worse. Could someone else have driven my car and caused an accident? Okay. I nodded, but I have one request. Let me make a phone call first to verify something. Officer nodded. I pulled out my phone and called the dealership service manager, putting it on speaker. Manager, this is Russell. Quick question. Has anyone touched my car recently? There was a 2-second pause on the other end. Your car?
No.
The last service was 2 weeks ago. After we finished, we parked it back in its spot. The keys have been with you. The whole time no one here has touched it. Are you sure? Positive. Our dealership has a policy. Every time a customer's vehicle goes in or out, we log it. The call ended. The officer looked at me. I held my phone, my mind racing. So, where did the scrape come from? Where did the blood come from? The murmuring in the crowd grew louder. John was energized, given up. Yet it couldn't have been anyone but you. He grabbed my arm. Let's go. You're paying me that $30,000 today. I stumbled from the force, hitting the car door. My head struck the window frame, the pain making my vision go dark. In that instant, my eyes caught sight of the small black box attached to the windshield. Inside the car, the dash cam.
What? Wait.
I grabbed the car door and wouldn't let go. I want to see the dash cam footage right now. John froze, then sneered. What good is a last-ditch struggle? Planning to pull another trick. I ignored him and looked at the officer. Officer, if I really hit someone, there must be footage in the dash cam. The officer nodded, opened the car door, and removed the memory card from the dash cam. All right, let's watch it now. The footage loaded. Everyone held their breath, watching the progress. Bar crawl forward. John crowded in. Fast forward. Don't waste time. Yesterday at 6:34 p.m. That's when my dad got hit. The officer frowned. But hit. Fast forward anyway. The footage sped past, showing nothing but the gray parking garage wall. The knot in my chest loosened slightly. It seemed my car really had been parked here the whole time, never moved. The timestamp jumped to 6:30 p.m. yesterday in the footage. My car suddenly started and drove out of the underground garage. My heart dropped. The car approached an intersection. Light was red, but the car showed no sign of slowing down. It drove straight through an elderly man on the crosswalk. Couldn't dodge in time. He was hit and sent flying 20 feet, landing hard on the pavement. The car didn't stop at all. It simply made a U-turn and left. John shoved his phone in my face, his voice shaking. See that? That's my dad. What do you have to say now? You wanted evidence. There it is. You hit someone and don't remember. Think you have multiple personalities. Acting like you have amnesia to escape reality. Let me tell you something. You're paying for the medical bills, $30,000. Not a penny less. But I said nothing. Just stared at the screen. I dragged the progress bar back and forth. watching that segment over and over. Once, twice, 3 times, trying to find any flaw. But the more I watched, the more confused I became. Crowd completely lost it. The evidence is right there. What are you waiting for? Arrest her. Lock her up. Charge her. I was shoved around, surrounded by cursing voices. The officer held back the surging crowd. Just as he was about to speak, his radio crackled.
Copy that. Copy that.
After listening, his expression darkened. He turned to me and reached for his handcuffs. Russell Forensics just sent word. The blood on your car's bumper has been tested. The DNA matches.
He paused.
Bradley John's father. He stepped forward, and the handcuffs clicked around my wrists. You're under arrest for hit and run. Some in the crowd applauded and cheered. Others took photos. I was pushed toward the police car. My feet stumbled. My mind went blank. Impossible.
Très impossible.
I'd never driven a car. I couldn't drive. But the footage clearly recorded the entire crime. Could I really have multiple personalities? Did I kill someone and not remember? Wait, something's wrong. I stopped abruptly. The officer frowned. Get in the car. Please cooperate with the investigation. Don't waste time. The dash cam video was still playing on a loop. Officer. My voice trembled. Can I watch that video one more time? John cursed from the side, still trying to deny it. Officers.
Don't let her stall for time.
Just take her away. The officer stopped him, hesitated for a moment, then handed me the phone. I dragged the progress bar back to the beginning. The car left the garage, past the first intersection. Red light hit. The person made a U-turn, returned to the complex. I watched it again. Suddenly, my eyes locked onto a detail. Of course, the trick was right here. I looked up sharply. I know who the real culprit is. The words hung in the frigid air of the underground garage, sharp and sudden. John's sneer faltered for a fraction of a second before hardening back into a mask of pure fury. Are you out of your mind? The forensics match. The video matches. You're grasping at straws because you know you're going to rot in a cell. Officer, I said, ignoring John entirely and turning to the man holding the phone. Look at the traffic light in the video. Right there, at the intersection of Maple and 4th. Look at the bulb that is glowing. The officer, whose name tag read Officer Miller, frowned. He held the phone closer to his face, squinting at the tiny screen. It's red, Miss Russell. The car clearly blew past a red light. To you it's red, I said, a strange, cold calm settling over me. Because your brain is wired to see the color. You see a crimson glow, and your mind immediately registers stop. But I don't see red. I don't see green. When I look at a traffic signal, I don't look at the colors. I look at the positions. It's a habit survival has beaten into me. I step closer, pointing a finger at the screen. Standard traffic lights are vertical. Red is always on top. Yellow is in the middle. Green is at the bottom. Tell me, Officer Miller, which of those 3 bulbs is glowing in this video? Miller's brow furrowed deep. He tapped the screen, pausing the footage right as the Porsche entered the intersection. He zoomed in on the traffic light hanging over the crosswalk. The silence in the garage became absolute. The neighbors, who had been jeering and muttering only seconds ago, craned their necks to see. It's, Miller mumbled, his voice dropping an octave. He looked up at me, then back at the screen. It's the bottom bulb. Exactly, I said, the cold laugh finally slipping past my lips. The bottom bulb is glowing. But whoever edited this video used a crude color replacement filter. They wanted to make it look like a hit and run, so they digitally painted the glowing green bulb to look red. They thought they were clever. They forgot that to someone who actually has to memorize the anatomy of a traffic light to navigate the world, the physical position of the light is a dead giveaway. A collective murmur rippled through the crowd of neighbors. Wait, is that true? Someone near the back whispered. The bottom light is red. And that's not all. I continued, my voice growing steady, cutting through the damp chill of the concrete walls. Look at the streets in the video. Look at the sidewalk. Look at the curbs. Miller kept his eyes locked on the screen as I spoke. Our property manager, Mr. Vance. I nodded toward the man scratching his head near the elevator doors. Just told us we had a massive snowstorm 2 days ago. The weight of the snow supposedly broke the garage camera wires. If this accident happened yesterday at 6:30 p.m., the streets of our city should be lined with dirty, gray snowbanks. There should be salt on the asphalt. But look at the road in the footage.
It's bone dry.
The trees in the background have green leaves. This video wasn't recorded yesterday. It wasn't even recorded this season. John's face went from flushed to an unnatural, sickly shade of gray. That's just a glitch. The camera, the dash cam, must have been old. The date was wrong. You still hit him. The blood on your bumper proves it. How does the blood get on my bumper if the car never left the garage, John? I asked, turning to face him. You must have hit him weeks ago, his wife chimed in, her voice shrill. though her grip on her child was trembling now. If I hit him weeks ago, why is the blood fresh? I countered. The officer just said the forensic test matched your father's DNA. Fresh. Wet blood on a dry bumper doesn't stay fresh for weeks in a dusty garage. And a scrape mark doesn't miraculously appear overnight without dust settling in the grooves. Officer Miller slowly lowered the phone. The skepticism in his eyes was no longer directed at me. He looked at John, then at the property manager, Mr. Vance, who was quietly trying to step backward toward the exit. Step back inside, Mr. Vance, Miller said, his tone shifting from routine investigator to alert patrolman. Nobody leaves this garage just yet. I have nothing to do with this. Vance stammered, his hands rising defensively. I just pulled the footage. I told you, the garage cameras are down. Are they? I asked. Or did you turn them off? Miss Russell, Miller said, turning to me. If your car didn't leave the garage, how did this memory card get inside your dashcam? The card was in the unit. It has footage of a Porsche Panamera. Your license plate is clearly visible on the rear of the car in the photo John showed me. Let's look at that photo again, I said. John tried to pull his phone back, but Officer Miller snatched it out of his hand. The photo shows the rear of a Porsche Panamera with the plate A123, I noted. But where was that photo taken? Is there a landmark? A street sign? Miller zoomed in on the photo. It's a highway. There's a green sign in the distance, Route 9 South. I've never driven on Route 9 in my life, I said. But my car was serviced at the dealership 2 weeks ago. When they service the car, they transport it on a flatbed trailer or they test drive it. And sometimes they loan out similar models. But there's a much simpler explanation. John, where did you get this photo? A bystander. John yelled, his voice cracking. A bystander took it and sent it to me. A bystander just happened to know your phone number? I asked, taking a step toward him. A bystander saw a hit and run, didn't call the police, but somehow tracked down the son of the victim to text him a perfect, high-resolution photo of the fleeing car's license plate within hours. John opened his mouth, but no sound came out. Officer Miller, I said, I think we need to examine my car's locking mechanism. Porsches have highly sophisticated digital logs. Every time the door is unlocked, every time the ignition is turned, it's recorded in the vehicle's onboard computer. The dealership can pull those logs remotely, or we can look at the physical keys. I pointed to the key fob in Miller's hand. There are only 2 keys to this car in existence. One is in my apartment. The other is locked in a vault at the dealership for safekeeping. If the car was driven yesterday at 6:30 p.m., the onboard computer will show which key was used. And if no key was used, it means the car never started. Miller nodded slowly.
He pulled out his radio.
Dispatch, I need a digital forensics tech down at the underground parking of 1242 Elm Street. And run a check on a license plate, Alpha 123. Let's see if there are any duplicate plates registered or reported. You can't do this. John screamed, lunging forward. He wasn't pointing at me anymore. He was trying to grab his phone back from Miller. My father is dying. We need that money. She's a rich bitch who doesn't care about us. She's lying. Get back, sir, Miller warned, placing a hand on his holster. The crowd of neighbors, once a unified wall of righteous fury, began to dissolve. People were stepping away from John and his wife. The whispers had changed. I don't understand, a woman from the 3rd floor muttered. If she didn't hit him, how did the blood get there? That's what we're going to find out, Miller said. He looked at his partner, who had just walked down the garage ramp. Secure the vehicle. Nobody touches the bumper. And lock down the property manager's office. I want to see those camera servers. An hour later, the garage was flooded with blue and red lights, casting long, strobing shadows against the concrete. The digital forensics investigator, a quiet woman named Detective Chun, had arrived with a specialized diagnostic scanner. She plugged it into the OBD2 port under my Porsche's steering wheel. I stood by, a foil blanket draped over my shoulders to ward off the subterranean draft. The onboard computer is clean, Chun announced, looking up from her tablet. The engine hasn't been started in 17 days. The last time the ignition was turned over was when it was returned from the dealership on the afternoon of the 27th. A heavy silence fell over the garage. What about the door locks? Miller asked. The driver's side door was unlocked manually using a physical key cylinder yesterday afternoon at 4:12 p.m., Chin said. Not the transponder signal. A physical copy of the key blade was inserted into the emergency lock under the handle cap. My heart did a slow, heavy thud. A physical key? I have the only physical key. The backup at the dealership is a digital fob. Which means someone made a physical mold or got a blank cut, Chin said. She walked over to the front of the car, looking at the dashcam. And the memory card in this dashcam, it's a SanDisk 64 gigabytes. The serial number doesn't match the one standardly issued with this specific brand of camera. It was swapped. Miller turned his gaze to Mr. Vance, who was currently sitting on the bumper of a police cruiser, his head buried in his hands. Mr. Vance, Miller said, his voice dropping into a dangerous, quiet register. Do you want to tell me how someone got a physical key to Miss Russell's car? Or should we wait until we search your apartment and find the key cutter? Vance cracked. He looked up, his eyes bloodshot and wide with panic. It was John. It was all John's idea. He came to me a week ago. He said his dad was drowning in debt and got hurt at work, but the company wouldn't pay. He said Miss Russell has millions sitting in her bank, that she doesn't even use that stupid car. He promised me 10 grand if I helped. Vance, you idiot, shut up. John roared from the back of another police car, where he was already handcuffed. I didn't do the video. Vance sobbed, ignoring him. John hired some guy online to make the video. They took footage from a rental Porsche Panamera they got for a day in another state. They matched the color. They edited the license plate onto the back of the car in the photo, and they edited the traffic light so it looked like a red light violation. John's father, his father wasn't hit by a car. He fell down the stairs at the construction site where he works. John brought some of his dad's blood in a vial from the hospital. He scraped the bumper with a crowbar and smeared the blood on it yesterday afternoon. The neighbors who had remained to watch the drama unfold gasped. The wife, who had been crying hysterically on her knees earlier, was now silently backing away, trying to blend into the shadows. 2 officers quickly stepped in her path. And the cameras? Miller asked. I cut the wires, Vance whispered. I cut them so there wouldn't be any footage of John going down there with the blood and the crowbar. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I needed the money. My mortgage. Save it for the judge, Miller said coldly. He turned to his partner. Arrest him. Conspiracy, fraud, tampering with evidence, filing a false police report, and breaking and entering. Miller walked over to me. He reached into his pocket, pulled out a small key, and unlocked the handcuffs around my wrists. The cold steel slipped away, leaving raw, red rings on my skin. I owe you an apology, Miss Russell, Miller said, his expression grim but respectful. If you hadn't pointed out that traffic light, we would have processed you tonight. You would have spent the weekend in a holding cell. I don't blame you, officer, I said, my voice barely audible over the hum of the police generators. The evidence was perfect. To a normal person, it was airtight. But you aren't normal, he said softly. No, I replied, looking down at my hands. I'm just colorblind. I watched as they put John, his wife, and Vance into the back of the cruisers. The red and blue lights flashed against the concrete walls. To me, they were just 2 different shades of the same dull gray, pulsing in the dark. But for the first time in my life, I was glad I couldn't see the colors. The quietness of my apartment after the police left was deafening. The door, splintered and hanging off its top hinge where John had kicked it in, let in the draft from the hallway. I stood in the middle of my living room, the adrenaline slowly draining from my system, leaving a bone-deep, hollow exhaustion. I looked at the bedside table. The certificate of my colorblindness was still lying on the floor where John had thrown it. I picked it up, smoothing out the crumpled edges of the paper. Severe protanopia. My father had spent his entire life trying to make sure I never felt limited by it. When he passed away, he left me the Porsche Panamera, a beautiful, roaring beast of a machine in a striking shade of deep forest green. To me, it was just a dark, elegant gray. He had bought it hoping that one day, medical science would find a way to cure me, that I would sit behind the wheel and see the world in the vibrant hues he loved so much. Instead, the car had sat in the underground garage, a monument to a dream that would never come true. And tonight, that monument had nearly become my coffin. I walked over to the window, looking down at the street. The police cars were gone, but a single investigator's vehicle remained. Detective Chun was still downstairs, sealing the garage area. I knew I couldn't stay in this building anymore. The neighbors who had screamed at me, who had called me heartless and cruel, would never look at me the same way. Even now, knowing the truth, they would feel the awkward weight of their own rush to judgment. But as I turned back to my bedroom, a small, nagging thought scratched at the back of my mind. How did John get the exact dimensions of my car's keyblade? Vance said John made a physical copy of the key. But to do that, you need access to the original key for more than just a few seconds. You need a mold, or you need the key code from the dealership. I remembered the phone call I had made to the service manager at the dealership. Your car?
No.
The last service was 2 weeks ago. The keys have been with you the whole time. But there had been a pause. A distinct, 2-second hesitation. I sat down on the edge of my bed, my eyes narrowing. The police had arrested the immediate actors, John, his wife, Vance. But a scam this elaborate, involving a rented Porsche of the exact same model, a professionally edited video, a cloned physical key, and a targeted extraction of $30,000. This wasn't just a desperate neighbor seizing an opportunity. This was planned, and someone else had to have provided the key. I pulled out my phone. It was 4:45 a.m. I didn't care about the time. I searched for the contact of the dealership's general manager, Not the service manager I'd spoken to earlier, but the owner, a longtime friend of my father's named Arthur Pendleton. The phone rang 4 times before a groggy, gravelly voice answered. "Hello." "Arthur," I said, my voice ice cold. "It's Russell. I need you to do something for me right now." The next morning, the rain had washed away the remaining snow, leaving the city slick and reflecting the gray morning sky. I stood in the high-ceilinged showroom of Pendleton Porsche. The air smelled of expensive leather, floor wax, and new rubber. In the center of the showroom floor stood a brand new Panamera, its metallic paint gleaming under the halogen spotlights. Arthur Pendleton walked out of his glass-walled office, his expression a mixture of worry and profound fatigue. He was in his late 60s, with silver hair and a tailored suit that looked slightly rumpled. "Russell, my dear," he said, coming over to take both of my hands. "I heard what happened. It's monstrous. Absolutely monstrous. To think that someone would use your condition, your father's memory, to try and ruin you. The police have the neighbors," I said quietly, pulling my hands back. "But they don't have the coordinator." Arthur frowned. "The coordinator? What do you mean?" "John is a construction worker who can barely pay his rent," I said, walking slowly around the display car. "He doesn't know how to perform a relay attack on a high-end security system. He doesn't know how to contact offshore digital editors to fake video metadata. And he certainly didn't have the thousands of dollars required to rent a matching Porsche Panamera for a day just to shoot a fake dashcam video." I stopped and looked at Arthur. Someone gave him the blueprint. Someone who knew exactly how often my car was driven, who had access to my vehicle logs, and who had the ability to duplicate my physical key blade during its last service. Arthur's face hardened. "Russell, are you suggesting someone in my dealership is involved in this?" "I asked you to pull the access logs for my vehicle's key profile," I said. "Did you?" Arthur sighed, reaching into his breast pocket and pulling out a printed sheet of paper. "I did. The master digital key profile for your vehicle is stored on our secure server. It requires a high-level manager's credentials to access or download. I ran the audit trail last night after you called." He handed me the paper. I couldn't read the highlighted sections, the color coding was lost on me, but I could read the text. "User access, Marcus Vance." I stared at the name. Vance? The property manager's last name is Vance. "Marcus Vance is our senior service manager," Arthur said, his voice dropping to a whisper. He's the brother of your building's property manager, Thomas Vance. Marcus has been with us for 5 years. He had full access to your car when it came in for maintenance 2 weeks ago." The puzzle pieces snapped together with a sickening, heavy click. Marcus Vance had the key code. He had the physical car. He knew, from the maintenance records, that the car was registered to a woman who was severely colorblind and never drove it. He knew the car sat in a basement garage monitored by his brother, Thomas. Together, they realized they had the perfect target, a wealthy, isolated woman with an expensive car she couldn't legally drive, an absent father, and a neighbor who was desperate enough for money to act as the aggressive face of the scam. They didn't just want $30,000. If I had paid the $30,000, it wouldn't have stopped there. They would have blackmailed me. "We won't go to the police about the hit and run if you keep paying." They would have bled me dry, month after month, year after year, leveraging my fear of prison and my inability to prove my own innocence against me. "Where is Marcus now?" I asked. "He's in the service bay," Arthur said, his jaw tight. "I told him to come in early to prepare a vehicle. The police are already on their way, Russell." "No," I said, a sudden spark of determination igniting in my chest. "Let me speak to him first." The service bay was clean, brightly lit, and quiet. The only sound was the occasional hiss of a pneumatic lift. Marcus Vance was standing near a diagnostic terminal, typing on a tablet. He looked up as the heavy double doors swung open. When he saw me standing next to Arthur, his hand froze midair. He was a young man, probably in his early 30s, with slicked back hair and a sharp, hungry look in his eyes. "Mr. Pendleton," Marcus said, his voice tight. "Miss Russell. Is there a problem with the service on the Panamera?" "The service was excellent, Marcus," I said, walking toward him. "Particularly the part where you cloned my emergency key and handed it to your brother." Marcus's eyes darted toward the exit. He took a step back, but Arthur was already standing near the main doors, his arms crossed. "I don't know what you're talking about," Marcus stammered. "If this is about some neighborhood dispute." "Your brother Thomas has already confessed," I said, stopping a few feet from him. "He's sitting in a holding cell right now, singing like a bird. He told the police everything. About the key, about the rented Porsche, about the offshore video editor. And most importantly, about you." Marcus's face drained of color. He looked like a man who had built a perfect glass house, only to realize he was standing in the path of a rock slide. I was just trying to help John," Marcus whispered, his bravado crumbling. His dad really is sick, Miss Russell. They're going to lose everything." So you decided to take everything from me instead? I asked, my voice deadly quiet. You thought because I can't see the colors of the world, I wouldn't see you? It wasn't supposed to go this far, he pleaded, his hands shaking. We just wanted the insurance payout or a quick settlement. We didn't think you'd fight it. We thought you'd just pay the 30 grand to make it go away. The police are outside, Marcus, Arthur Pendleton said from the doorway. You're done. Marcus let out a long, shuddering breath and slumped against the diagnostic terminal. He didn't try to run.
He knew there was nowhere to go.
As the sirens began to wail in the distance, growing louder as they approached the dealership, I turned and walked out of the service bay. The morning air outside was cold, but the rain had stopped. The sun was beginning to break through the clouds, casting brilliant, blinding reflections on the wet asphalt. I stood on the sidewalk, watching the police cars pull into the dealership lot. To the rest of the world, the sky was turning a brilliant, vibrant blue, and the wet leaves on the trees were a rich, deep green. I couldn't see those colors. I would never see them. But as I looked up at the traffic light at the corner of the street, watching the bottom light glow with a steady, quiet brilliance, I smiled. I didn't need to see the colors to see the truth.